Hello, and welcome to Old Scary World. Today, we're going to be looking at evidence from China. I haven't done a video about China before, and I happened to stumble upon these interesting photographs depicting China in the late 1800s and early 1900s, and I couldn't help but notice the striking similarities to what we associate with Tartaria and the Old World. And I know that there's been a lot of speculation about whether or not China was Tartary or vice versa. And we go back and forth within the community as far as the boundaries of the Grand Tartarian Empire and the Old World empires and so on and so forth, and the legitimacy of the dates and the inconsistencies. So we'll start off with this photo here of these ruins here, this archway. And as always, we see the just impeccable kind of construction here that survives well throughout the ages. And we see the arch, but we see this obviously Eastern influence, and where did that come from exactly? As far as we don't see a lot of evidence of it in Europe at the same time, but we do see evidence of it in other parts of what we would consider Grand Tartary. And we'll see more of that as we go along throughout this series here. And here we have another example in the sense that we have this grand archway here, this circular, formation here, perfect symmetry. And we've seen that in Cologne, Germany. There's a famous bridge there that has a similar design. And we just see this extra effort put in so that the tall boats can come through. But instead of just making it straight, they make it rounded. So they go through that extra effort just for aesthetics. And it's really beautiful, and the reflection and everything. It's very well thought out, very, very well, orchestrated. And we see also in the next photo, we see this perfect symmetry, just perfect straight lines. This grand fortress here, part of the Great Wall. And, I'm sure some of you have heard, and if you haven't, that the Great Wall of China wasn't as old as we're told, because we know that Alexander the Great, according to the official story, went to China, and he made no mention of the Great Wall. He would have had to have passed it, yet no mention of it. You'd think that that would be something that he would mention. So that's very interesting. So then we get into the possibility that it was not necessarily what we would consider China, but what we would consider the Mongolians or the Tartarians who built the Great Wall, especially when we consider which way that the windows are facing, and there's other things in there. But this is a good example, and I hadn't seen this one before. And it almost looks, and here's the interesting thing, with some of the buildings that we're told that aren't as old as they are, they look old. This is supposed to be very old, yet it looks new. Some people say that the Great Wall was built as early as the 1700s. So you figure that one out. And here we have another example. It is either built so well that it can weather centuries of weather and abuse, or it's not as old as they tell us. It's one or the other. It can't be both. So this is interesting here. And just the sheer construction of it in general is interesting. All right. Here we have another example of things that seem out of place, in the sense that here we have this strange looking, it's small, but it's very grandiose, and then it's just surrounded by just dry rocks, very arid kind of landscape, and it's really baffling. It's like it's a part of a greater community, a greater town or city that was destroyed and just left in ruin. You can see how right here it's kind of tilting and everything, like the foundation's off kilter, and it's just surrounded by these giant rocks. It just looks very odd to me, maybe to other people. And zoom in a little bit here, and we just see just some of the classic, you know, kind of columns and archways and all those kinds of things that we find throughout, but with this, you know, eastern flare here on the roof. And it just really makes you wonder what other buildings might have been around this, what other surrounding areas, you know. There we have another shot of the Great Wall. And we just see, you know, just the amount of effort that it would have taken. And I'm not saying that it's not within human capabilities. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is that it was constructed faster than they're telling us, and it was constructed later, because it should have been mentioned in earlier texts and earlier accounts of Asian history, and it's just not. We don't see a lot of talk about it until way after it was supposedly built. And I just find that very interesting. Especially the Alexander the Great connection. Like, you can look into that. I think that that's one of the biggest pieces of evidence, and damning pieces of evidence against the official narrative as far as that's concerned. And then, you know, we see just nothing around it. No evidence of any kind of vegetation or anything like that. Like, it's just, it was built. And I always, you know, when we could talk about these construction photos of, you know, North America or Europe or Australia, is I always think about caloric intake. I always think about how much food it would take to feed the workforce and to keep them healthy and strong enough to do the manual labor that was supposedly done to construct these things. So that's just, you know, my personal analytical brain working. Is like, well, how did they feed these people? How did they keep these people hydrated? How did they keep these people healthy enough to keep working around the clock? So that's just, you know, that's just one example. And then the other thing I just want to point out in this photo is, and I know, you know, this, supposedly this wall was meant to be defense, you know, in warfare, and we see evidence of that, but it would take some pretty heavy artillery to do some of this damage. I apologize for the low resolution, but you kind of see what I'm saying here. Here, and then also here, we see a lot of damage. You know, and I know this photo is not the best example, but I'm telling you, there's a connection here. So, moving on. And here, you know, this photo I included just because it's, you know, it's a pretty picture. Really, it's like, it's a beautiful picture here with the reflection and everything's like on point. The symmetry, you know, this tree just growing out the side, you know, that's cool. And it's just kind of mysterious. Like, you'd have to take a boat to get out. You know, it's pretty cool. You know, and then we see possibly, you know, some type of antiquitech here, some type of conductor. And there's been a lot more talk about these things, you know, lately with all the energy storms we've been having. These things have been acting kind of weird when they're hit with lightning, you know, and there's some videos out there with some chains attached to some of these Tibetan temples in Nepal. And, you know, I'll try to find that, maybe do a video about that. It's very interesting. Some of you might have seen that video where the chains start spinning around. But anyways, moving on. Here we have just a lone archway here, the dirt road. You know, another example of why would they build this and then you could just go right around it. So was this under construction, even though this is supposed to be ancient? You know, is this an example of something being under construction which would actually be counter to the narrative? In other words, when we see construction in New York City, San Francisco, Chicago, they say, okay, this is the official story. Look, you can see them building it, but this stuff's supposed to be old, but it looks unfinished. So it's kind of like the opposite kind of contradiction. I think that some people will agree with me on that. I mean, what would be the point in building this grand entrance as a means of defense when you could just simply go right around it over here or over here? So I just thought that was interesting. And then another interesting thing here, and obviously this is all very interesting, is these I guess they'd be kind of like pagodas. I'm not sure if that's the right definition here, but something like that. I see them popping out here. And once again, you get into the problem of just the landscape not matching. Like there should be more roads, there should be more housing, there should be more evidence of agriculture, you know, things like that. But no, they're just here. So obviously when these were built, it was a different time, it was a different just vibe going on. That's just my impression. And then here, you know, just an example of the type of construction that they were doing supposedly back then, and just the attention to detail, you know. And I know I don't get into like a lot of crazy theories, you know, things that can't. I just like to show these photos to people, you know, the people who subscribe to the channel or people who are just stumbling upon this channel, and let them do their own research. In other words, let the viewers decide. I'll interject an opinion here or there, obviously, but in the end, I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything, really. I'm just presenting my findings, these photographs before they disappear. You know, I try to find more obscure photos as we go along with this channel. Been doing this for over a year now, and I try not to repeat any photos or use photos that other people have used. And sometimes that happens, obviously, but I think everybody presents their evidence or their findings a little bit different. Everybody researches things a little bit different, so that's good. Okay, the reason I included this one is, you know, once again, we got the horse and buggies, you know, and this obviously could be, you know, people would say this could be influence from the West, you know, obviously the Westerners coming over and bringing their type of technology, you know, the inheritors, but not the inheritors to China, but more of the controllers or the colonizers, if you want to go down that road. I don't really like that word, but you know what I mean. And you know, it looks very, like down here, like if you're just looking at this, it's like very Wild West almost. And then up here you kind of see more of something of the old world here. And then this giant wall here, you know, they're coming through here and they got their little tents and things. And then what the hell is this? Random wall on top of the wall, like a wall on top of the wall. So it could be like a rampart, you know, but then once again, it's not finished. See, so what's the point? What's the point of having this extra defense here? And then here you got the windows for the archers, you know, look out and stuff. And then this void here on both sides. Okay, and then we see some evidence of like telegraph wires, maybe telephone pole, so to speak. You know, very interesting stuff here. I've never seen all these photos I've never seen before. I'm really just going through these with you. I haven't taken the time to pre-examine these. I like to just kind of go off the cuff here and just see. And okay, so here we have another one of these bridges here. Very interesting construction, very, very Romanesque kind of construction, you know, with the concrete construction. And then we got another one here in the background, and then we got home dude chilling, you know. It's cool, I get it, and these guys are looking out, you know, but I mean, this almost looks like these guys almost look like they were placed in here. See these artifacts around here? Like, I'm no like Photoshop wizard or anything, but this looks a little suspicious, like these guys were placed in. See how there's this outline kind of aura? It's a little off color, and there's like some chunkiness here. There's these random little pixels and things. That's kind of strange. It could just be because of the resolution, but it's a little weird because it's not happening really here so much. I mean, he's pixelated here. That makes a little bit of sense, but these guys up here on top of the bridge, that's kind of weird, like these straight lines and stuff. Now, if anybody knows, and especially how this dude's like cut off. Let's see, can I zoom in more? I guess not on this picture, but you see what I'm saying? Like this dude's like edged off right here. That's pretty weird. And this guy a little bit too. This guy's hand's missing. That's pretty weird. I don't know if you guys know anything more about this kind of like artifacting going on here. Leave it in the comments. That's pretty weird. So anyways, next picture. Okay, so another really ornate bridge. You know, and why all these extra things here? I mean, that's just purely design, maybe. Or maybe there's a functionality to it. You know, in other words, why didn't they just make it, I guess extra support. I guess that would be extra support there. All these little arches is like extra support. That's the best kind of support you can make as an arch. You can hold the most weight the way it's distributed. But once again, just, you know, really cool. And the statue is pretty cool. This dude's posing. You know, that's cool. I get it. It's just who really built it. That's all I'm saying. You know, because we know that as civilizations get handed down and people get defeated and kingdoms fall and new people come in, that sometimes people take credit for things, you know. And there's just a lot of, you know, evidence to suggest that a lot of people are guilty of that. You know, different cultures and so forth have been accused of that. So, just, you know, a little food for thought. All right. So here's a pretty normal picture, you know, but it's, you know, it's nice, and it kind of just exemplifies, you know, the uniformity of it. And, you know, people would live in these kinds of things and go about their day-to-day life and everything, but why build such grand things? You know, just like there had to be a purpose. There had to be some symbolism. I think that's the right word to build these, and also there was a functionality to these things. In other words, these types of structures, like this tall structure here, this tower, they always have these like antenna type things. You know, this like kind of grand edifice kind of thing here, and then it's like these were the temples, these were the healing centers, these were people maybe prayed, you know, things like that. It was like every town had to have a kind of center, you know, and like a heart or a brain of the village, you know. And it's interesting to think who first started doing that. You know, we see evidence of that in other civilizations. Okay, and then the reason that I included this photo is here is we see a lot of this nowadays with these, you know, very straight coastlines, almost like a star fort, maybe like a remnant of a Chinese star fort. You know, like they had to build up this wall here on the water. This isn't natural. This is obviously man-made, and then we got this on top of here. But then once again, kind of missing something, like something should be around all the way around here, not just this little section here. Okay. And I don't know how old this photo is, but obviously it was taken from some type of aerial craft, whether it was a plane or a hot air balloon or some of the airship, something like that. But, you know, and no people. You know, there should be more people maybe, I don't know, a little weird. But yeah, that's why I included it, just because of the similarities to what we see sometimes with the star forts and the artificial coastlines, you know, man-made engineering there. Okay, and then here obviously it was in like the Badlands, or like kind of like the wastelands of China, which aren't really talked about too much. And you know, possibly maybe there was people that lived up here. You know, maybe there was kind of like those you see in the southwest of the United States, and the Pueblo Indians, you know, kind of like little villages built into the side here. We see some evidence maybe. I know it's not the best resolution, I apologize again, but you kind of see what I'm saying. Maybe some quarrying going on, maybe some ancient civilizations, you know, just very interesting. And here we have, well, now what I see these a lot in Chinese cemeteries and sometimes in Chinese estates and stuff. Is it's almost like the equivalent to like an obelisk, like the, you know, ancient Egyptian or Sumerian type of obelisks. You know, you see these kinds of things here with the I guess they're like lion dog type things. I'm not exactly sure, but it looks very old, looks very neglected here, but still standing relatively strong, you know. And we see it's almost like the equivalent of when you're looking at quote unquote like Roman architecture, and you see the columns with the busts on top, or the columns with, you know, orbs or things like that. You know, it's like there's this universal aesthetic of like a cylindrical or pillar-like structure, and then ornamented with, you know, some type of decoration, like an animal or a leader or something like that. So that was interesting. And then oh yeah, the reason that I included this one is just because of how old. See, it's all like run down. They got the plants growing through, and that always fascinates me. As far as to say, why would something that was so much effort was put into just be neglected? You know, it's like something must have happened where people stopped taking care of it. And I always think that's interesting. Like when a temple, or, you know, a great city, or any kind of thing like that, even just a courtyard like this, what made people what made people want to stop taking care of it? Very interesting. So I'll just leave it at that, I guess, for the most part. I mean, I think most people understand, like, when people go through the effort to build something, it's maintained throughout the generations, and then something occurs, some cataclysm, some catastrophe, some major upheaval, and then all of a sudden people just don't want to take care of it. People don't want to live there. People don't want to, you know, care for it. It's just the things I think about. Okay, here's another good example of just, you know, neglect again, you know, and no repair here. And it's built into the side of the mountain. I don't know if you guys can tell the scale here, but this is like the ground. There's a guy standing here for scale. So let's assume that he's, you know, average height or something like 5'7", 5'8", 5'6", something like that. Maybe he's a tall guy, maybe he's 6'1" or something. So, and then, so we have to surmise that if he's standing on level ground, so that he'd be about 5.5, 11, 16, 25, 30, 50. I mean, we're talking about maybe up to here, we're talking about close to 50, 60 feet. You know, and then this one here, spit that out, it's like 15 feet wide, you know. So there had to be some reason for that. And I'm not sure if that's the end of the video yet. Let's see. Yeah, so I'll just leave it at that. That's all the pictures I got for China. Now, leave in the comments if you want to see another video about China. I can try to find some more photos, kind of different ones. These are more like ancient kind of ruins. You know, if you want to see more of like cities in China in the 1800s, or you want to see more of the wilderness or anything like that, more of the statues or the art, let me know in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching. Goodbye.